Hey, it's Meatball.
And Mark.
And this is the Rocker Morning Show on demand from 107.7 RKR.
Ian, you're on with Mark and Meatball.
Good morning, Ian. How are you?
I'm not too bad at all, thank you. I was recently 77 years old, and now a week or so later, I'm still feeling relatively okay.
Fantastic.
It's something of a miracle, but yes, I'm physically in good health and physically, well, I'm still at work. That's the important thing. I'm right in the middle of mixing a new Jethro Tull album, and I shall be carrying on with that as soon as I finish these interviews this afternoon.
Man, well, it sounds like you're living quite the life, man. You're a Grammy Award-winning musician, leader of Jethro Tull, as you said, and pretty exciting news. You've got this extensive version of your entire solo career coming out, 8314 box set. It's good to have you back on the Rocker Morning Show, man. It's good to hear your voice again.
Yes, well, thank you very much for having me along. And from 1983 to 2014, there were a number of solo albums released, sometimes recorded because I was perhaps experimenting with something a little different that I didn't think was appropriate to do under the Jethro Tull banner. But much of it is the music that I suppose I am personally more associated with being acoustic music. So I'm a player of acoustic instruments and don't, or very rarely do I pick up an electric guitar. So I'm an acoustic guy, and so that began actually with Jethro Tull back in 1968, and on and off through the many years I've recorded quite a few acoustic tracks that I went into the studio and basically put down the basic track and vocals by myself, and then the other guys, when they arrived at the studio hours or days later, would add their own little bits too. So it's a process I've been working on for many years.
When you started putting this box set together, and you took basically the 40 plus years of your career as a solo artist, and you put it in front of yourself, and then saw that it could fit into this little box, was it did it overwhelm you at all to realize kind of the volume of things that you have done in this regard?
Well, being released as a vinyl collection, vinyl records, are quite thin, so you can pile 10 of them into a meaningful sized box. It weighs a ton. I was surprised when I had to do an unboxing video a couple of weeks ago that I really had to use two hands to pick up the box. It was quite heavy because it also contains a very large booklet full of all of the history of the solo album recordings and all the background, all the photographs and everything. So it's quite a big, chunky package. Yeah. But ironically, it's got these really thin little things called vinyl records, which I know well from history. But well, somebody asked me the other day, do I play vinyl records at home? I can't remember where. If I have a record player, I can't remember where it is. So it's not a way that I listen to music, because I either listen professionally to high resolution digital audio, or sometimes if I'm sitting on an airplane and need to be calmed down for a bumpy flight, then I listen to Handel or Bach on my noise-canceling earbuds.
Oh, love that. Love that.
Do you have a quote about this box set where you say your solo music wasn't made out of dissatisfaction with fellow musicians or a group identity, but you truly wanted to just try something different? Is there anything in this box set or in your solo career that may have started as a Jethro Tull project that you kind of decided would be better off as a solo venture?
Well, not necessarily. I think in the case of all those albums, they were deliberately intended to be solo albums prior to beginning to write them. There have been a couple of occasions when I started writing something that was a solo album, but it ended up being a Jethro Tull album, partly because of pressure from the record company, or partly because the music perhaps sounded at the end of it all that it more likely could be a Jethro Tull album in terms of the overall musicality of it. But mostly my recording of solo albums has been because I wanted to try something a little different. So, to do an album that was orchestral flute instrumentals, it might have been a little inappropriate to release that as Jethro Tull. So that was done. The Divinities album was indeed commissioned by EMI's classical music division to do something, very different from Jethro Tull.
Yeah. You're primarily known, as the flute player for Jethro Tull, but flute was not your first instrument. You played acoustic guitar, you played harmonica, and then you picked up the flute after that. But as I noticed, with your solo work, you also picked up a bunch of other acoustic instruments, as you've mentioned. What was it about, that journey that just kind of opened the door and said, oh, I want to play this instrument. I want to play this instrument. Was it out of necessity for a sound, or did you just want to do it?
Well, two reasons really. One, back in the couple of years before Jethro Tull began, I decided that playing electric guitar wasn't the way forward for me, because I was okay. I was as good as a lot of other people at the time, but I was not in the same league as Eric Clapton or Jimmy Page or Ritchie Blackmore, or any of those guys who were the session guys at the time in London. And so that was part of the reason that I took up mainly the acoustic guitar with a view to writing songs, because I could sit in a bedroom or in a hotel room somewhere with an acoustic guitar without annoying the neighbors too much. But the other reason was that sometimes with instruments like the mandolin or the bouzouki, because they are instruments that I was not familiar with at the time, it forced me to not rely on guitar technique, such as I was in possession of guitar technique, but with instruments I couldn't really play properly, it gave me an insight into music to keep it simple, to keep it very essential. And sometimes when you sit down with an instrument that you can't really play, you come up with ideas that you would never dream of with the instrument that you know too well, because you jump into much more complex musical composition straight away. But playing music, or writing music with instruments you don't know too well is something I would suggest to many people they should give it a try, because you will come up with something different that way. It won't just sound like all the other things you've done.
Right. In learning some of these instruments, have you had somebody who is, a quote unquote expert in them come up and say, "Hey, love what you're doing, but you're playing it wrong"? Has that ever happened?
I've never had a music lesson in my life, and everything I played, I just pick it up and fiddle around with it, and something comes out, and it's up to me to try and make something of it. But I'm self-taught in everything that I do.
That is incredible.
It doesn't mean that I do it well. It just means that I feel that it's mine, and I haven't learned the techniques or the skills that have been passed to me by other people. It's odd because several members of the band teach music, and they have students that they teach online lessons to or in person, and it's kind of weird because I've been asked on a number of occasions, would I go to some music college and do some thing with their students to impart some notes of wisdom. But I've always turned it down because I don't really feel that I have anything. I certainly don't have the technique to be a teacher. I don't have the skills to be a teacher. That requires a special approach, and I don't have that. And I also don't know the names of the notes that I play. I just play it. I mean, I play by ear. I'm not a musician who has an academic background, so it would be very difficult for me to impart any wisdom to another flute student or any kind of a student for that matter. Well, I could possibly teach geography. Hey. Maybe I could give geography a go, or Latin, but no, not music.
You know what? I think you might make geography and Latin a little more exciting with a flute solo in there. I might be able to stay awake for that class.
Yeah, you might. You might indeed be more alert if I punctuated some of the early Latin lessons that I had as a child, and they certainly could do with a bit of livening up, that's for sure. Nautai et agricolae bellum gerant.
Oh my gosh.
So the sailors and the farmers waged war, and I also, why am I having to learn this? It's not really applicable in the world in which I live, but those things stick in your mind all those years later, farmers and sailors joining in battle, wow. useful stuff.
Right, right.
8314 Boxed. It's out on Friday. You can pre-order now through your website. Ian, always a pleasure to have you on the show. You're welcome back anytime, and congratulations on the box set, my sir.
Well, thanks very much. Good to talk to you. Take care.
All right, thanks, Ian.